Welcome back. Farmer Ash here to discuss how what you eat, what dietary fats you consume impacts your hormones, impacts your thyroid, impacts your metabolism, because they are all connected. And so this is actually take two of this video. Many people reported that take one, the volume was way too low, so I apologize, but this is a very important topic. So I'm going to re-record and discuss this topic again. So unfortunately, mainstream wants to tell us otherwise, but we have an epidemic of estrogen dominance fueled by high PUFA diets, phytoestrogen exposure in food, which we'll dive in today, toxic agrochemicals and other toxins in our food, and personal care products that are known endocrine disruptors. So we have changed the types of fat that we consume, and we've introduced so many estrogen like compounds into our food system. And this is having severe consequences on our hormonal states and overall metabolic health. So, unfortunately, simplified conventional Western medicine lab work, such as TSH for evaluating your thyroid and estrogen levels in your blood, these do not detect poor metabolic health and estrogen dominance. TSH is not a good marker for thyroid health, and estrogen levels in our blood is not representative of estrogen levels stored in our tissues. Estrogens and estrogen like compounds, they are just ubiquitous in our environment these days. They are lipophilic. And so in our body, they're stored in our fat tissues, which again, stored estrogen will not show up in lab work. So many people think that they're low in estrogen, but this is changing the internal environment inside of our body. So we're seeing continuous rises in obesity, chronic disease, and a decline in our life expectancy as humans. Trends that are clearly saying you are not thriving, right? So what we are doing, the conventional food system, it's not working. And many of you may not know this. My sister and I, Sarah, we have a health focused account, Strong Sistas. So we have helped a number of people through a number of health challenges, and metabolic health is the root of most problems. And so this is kind of what fueled our interest into starting Nourish and Angel Acres Egg Co. is recognizing that what we eats matters and it impacts our health. And there's just been such a huge change over the last 50 to 70 years in the food system, and it is really negatively impacting human health. So, again, most people are estrogen dominant and have poor metabolic health. And that makes sense because there's a bi-directional relationship between being in a state of estrogen dominance and your metabolic health. Estrogen dominance will lead to lower metabolic rates since elevated estrogen interferes with the breakdown of TBG, and higher levels of TBG. So this is thyroxine binding globulin, TBG. Higher TBG levels then means that more active thyroid hormone T3 is bound up, and it reduces the amount of T3 accessibility for your cells. And T3 is required for proper metabolic health. T3 is like the metabolic spark plug. We require T3 to reach our cells in order to initiate proper energy production. So estrogen dominance leads to less T3 available for cellular uptake, which leads to poor metabolic health. And this is one of the many reasons why a person can have like normal thyroid hormone levels and still be suffering from low thyroid intracellular function with symptoms such as constipation, weight gain, fatigue, high LDL cholesterol, poor gut function, and brain fog. What you eat every day impacts the internal environment of our bodies, and this has profound implications on your metabolic health. The types of fat and hormonal state serve as signaling molecules and can help turn enzymatic functions on or off, impacting energy production. And energy production is the center of having optimal health. So clearly, the conventional food system is not serving us. We're seeing a decline in life expectancy. Obesity and being overweight is just the norm these days. We're seeing a rise in chronic diseases. We see a rise in breast cancer, and we are seeing huge fertility issues. PCOS, hormonal imbalances, testosterone levels are plummeting. And no wonder this is happening because we've kind of created like a new breed of humans. We've changed the types of fat that we're consuming, And then this has changed the types of fat inside of us. And it's actually changed the types of fat inside of mother's milk relative to our ancestors. This has huge implications on our health and the health of future generations due to epigenetics. So, our goal at Nourish and Angel Acres Egg Club, Nourish and Angel Acres Egg Club, our goal is to create hormonally balanced, low PUFA food, how things used to be made so that you don't have to worry about these things anymore. Because this is a challenge today. Food sourcing is a huge challenge today, whereas this wasn't even a problem back in early 1900 because they didn't deal with a conventional food system. So I have talked extensively in other videos about how the types of fat that we consume in our diet, so the types like saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated PUFA, how the types of fat we consume has changed drastically over the last 50 to 100 years. And this is driven by the just huge increase in PUFA that's pervasive in our food system. But something that no one is really talking about in parallel to this large increase in PUFA consumption is also increased exposure to and consumption of estrogen-like compounds. And there's this huge misconception out there that women need more estrogen as we age. No, estrogen is another lie that conventional medicine has tried to sell to us, since synthetic estrogen medicine is very profitable. And so are waste products used in the food industry like flax and soy that contain estrogen-like compounds. So we are bombarded by estrogen-like compounds in the modern world everywhere we look. And these are all known to be endocrine disruptors, meaning they are interfering with proper hormone production and regulation. So we've got plastics and petrochemical estrogens, birth control, estrogen therapy, pesticides, and toxic chemicals used in agriculture. There's also been a large increase in phytoestrogen intake, and these are estrogen compounds in plants. They're very high in soy and flax, and then also in animal products where those animals have consumed soy and flax. So phytoestrogen is, again, a term used to describe estrogens that are derived from plants. They're similar in structure and function to the estrogens made inside of us, but they're not naturally occurring. So they're kind of like environmental estrogens. So we consume them exogenously and they impact us endogenously. And so think of all the products made from soy now, right? Soy milk, soy cheese, soy yogurt, all those dairy-free options. And then how many breads and baked goods and health products contain flax. So this is introducing a lot of phytoestrogens into our diet that we didn't regularly consume back in the early 1900s. And then on top of that, we've completely changed what livestock are eating. So now livestock, chickens and pigs, are consuming higher levels of phytoestrogens as well. And this is, again, wasn't common in the early 1900s. And so there are studies showing that high phytoestrogen content in the livestock feed leads to higher phytoestrogen levels in eggs and like chicken tissue, pork tissue, which then you consume. So let's focus in on these phytoestrogens in our food. Animal studies have documented that phytoestrogens in soy interfere with thyroid function, which, again, the thyroid is our master metabolic regulator. So if something interferes with thyroid, this is going to negatively impact metabolic rate. Lower metabolic rate means that you have less ATP, less energy produced, which means that all functions inside the body will be downregulated because your body just simply doesn't have enough resources to run all of those functions. And then it also means that you will have to consume a lower level of calories in your diet, low amount of food to maintain your weight. Whereas our ancestors were able to consume much higher levels of food and remain thin. With a lower metabolic rate, people put on weight much easier. So phytoestrogens in soy have been documented to interfere with thyroid function through the inhibition of thyroid peroxidase, which is an enzyme in the thyroid gland that plays a critical role in the production of thyroid hormones. Phytoestrogens also interfere with thyroid hormone transport in the blood, and we require that thyroid hormones are transported throughout the body because every cell in the body requires active thyroid hormone T3 to be able to, again, make sure that metabolism, the spark plug of our metabolic rate. So we want active thyroid hormone to be able to travel around the body and actually do its job of increasing metabolic rate. And in human studies, soy phytoestrogen intake has been shown to impair thyroid function in patients with type 2 diabetes and in a study of postmenopausal healthy women. So here's a quote from the literature. Quote, there was a significant increase in reverse T3 in both studies after 3 months of isoflavone supplementation, that's a phytoestrogen, whereas the reverse T3 values did not differ in the isoflavone-free diet, suggesting that this isoflavone, again, phytoestrogen, component is responsible for the reverse T3 changes seen. So reverse T3. So we want T3. Reverse T3 is like the opposite, and it counteracts and interferes with functioning of active thyroid hormone T3. So we do not want to see elevated reverse T3. And so the fact that phytoestrogen levels, an increase in phytoestrogen intake in our diet leads to higher levels of reverse T3 is not a good thing. So again, T3 is the active thyroid hormone, which is the spark plug for our metabolism. Reverse T3, RT3, is the anti-thyroid hormone. So overproduction of reverse T3 is dangerous since it will bind to T3 receptors on our cells while not increasing the metabolic rate like T3 does. So RT3 down regulates metabolism because it's competing with T3 receptor binding, lowering metabolic rate. So again, we've never been exposed to this amount of estrogen. We're like this trial run right now, the human species. And so we have this like collective exposure, personal care products, agrochemicals, increase in phytoestrogen level in our food, various health products, and then now phytoestrogen level in livestock feed, which then increases the amount of phytoestrogen levels in animal fats that we then consume as well. And these estrogen-like compounds, they'll sit in our fat. And it's not necessarily the total amount, it's the accumulated daily exposure that leads to high levels of toxicity and estrogen dominance over time. So it's like eating a little nibble of birth control every single day that compounds and adds and adds and adds on top of each other, meal after meal, day after day, year after year. These build up, leading to estrogen dominance and poor metabolic health. So again, what we eat matters. That's like our motto here, our passion, why we started this whole thing, when we realized the connection between what you're eating, dietary fatty acids, phytoestrogen, and human metabolic health. So studies now document that when these phytoestrogen-rich ingredients are not part of the diet for livestock, like chickens and pigs, the phytoestrogen content is not detectable in the final product, meaning then you won't consume any of them. So that is our passion here with eggs and Nourish. We have low phytoestrogen feed leading to low phytoestrogen level in the final product. So now you kind of understand the metabolic connection there. And so with how much environmental and food estrogens we're exposed to, there's no wonder why the world is the way that it is today, right? PUFA, phytoestrogen, these are really big deals because these are things that have drastically changed over the last 50 to 70 years. And so many people will bring up, Flax and phytoestrogen studies. However, if you really dive into the literature, they're confusing, they're convoluted, and many of them are flawed. In one study, people used to say that phytoestrogens, flax seeds in particular, are beneficial for cancer. The experiment was on mice with their ovaries removed, and they only measured one type of estrogen. So that's just not very representative, right? So if you are curious on digging into this a little bit more, I am not a medical doctor. This is not health advice. This is me encouraging you to not trust conventional medicine when it comes to phytoestrogens, when it comes to estrogen deficiency, and to just dig a little bit deeper. So 2 resources would be Dr. Wendy Sellens and then Dr. Hobbins, so those are two people involved that work together extensively, and Dr. Ray Peat. So Dr. Sellens and Dr. Hobbins, they have plenty of breast thermography imaging documenting that you will see noticeable changes in breast vascularity and estrogen levels from someone who lowers their phytoestrogen intake. So Dr. Wendy shows that phytoestrogens will stimulate the receptors in breasts, which then results in breast vascularity, thus increasing the risk of breast cancer. And so all of these pioneers, especially Dr. Peat, they question the status quo and have many research papers and documentation saying, no, you likely don't need more estrogen. You're likely estrogen dominant. And lowering your consumption of estrogenic foods, lowering your exposure to estrogenic chemicals and personal care products, this will help you regain balance. And we are seeing the impact of this estrogen increased exposure out in the wild. It's funny to me that this is not being talked about for human health, but it's very clearly documented for animals out in the wild. So let's go through a few examples. So University of West Florida, female fish were masculinized and male fish were feminized. Their testosterone dropped in half after being exposed to estrogen-like pollutants. University of California, Davis, seagull eggs exposed to DDT, a toxic agrochemical that has known endocrine disruption problems, developed as females, no matter what their genetic sex. University of Texas, turtle eggs exposed to estrogenic chemicals became female. Alligators exposed to pesticides had high estrogen levels, low testosterone, and low fertility rates. And finally, researchers in Japan managed to turn a male catfish into a female using soy. So again, these phytoestrogens, environmental estrogens, are having consequences on hormones. And this is very well documented. And so there's no wonder why estrogen is used as a fattening agent in the livestock industry. After seeing all these things, you get hormonal imbalances. This downregulates thyroid health and metabolic health, which means that the animals will fatten up quicker. And now I'm going to share just some alarming evidence in fish aquaculture. So I'm not a fish aquaculturist. We are doing mainly livestock on land, but fish aquaculture is like farming a fish. So let's read a few alarming lines from this study, and I'll share a screenshot of the study. It is from 2024, and one of the lines says, "It is well known that phytoestrogens influence the physiology of aquatic animals through their consumption or exposure of animals to polluted waters and through competition with estrogen receptors." Another important line, genistein, which is a phytoestrogen in soy, has estrogenic properties and is known to bind to human estrogen receptors. Soybean meal and soy protein concentrate are presently used in aqua feeds to completely replace fish meal without impairing growth. However, soybean meal and soy protein concentrate are especially high in phytoestrogens, which are able to bind to and activate estrogen hormones and estrogen receptors. Here are some studies that they list out in their review. So they say that in one study, genistein, soy phytoestrogen, was able to induce functional sex reversal. It caused sex reversal of 37% and 100% of the genetic males. The otherwise silent gene aromatase was expressed in the testes of some males exposed to this phytoestrogen. So exposure to the highest test concentration of genistein, the ovaries of female fish from both equal and genistein treatments showed delayed oocyte maturation, an enlarged ovarian lumen, proliferation of somatic stromal tissue, and so just hormonal problems, right? And then 72% of male fish showed feminized secondary sex characteristics. And one of the last few lines I'll share is including flavonoids such as genistein, a soy phytoestrogen, into the fish diet reduced androgen levels in male. So that's not what you want to see as a male. So I'll include a few more screenshots from this aquaculture study, but clearly this is being documented in fish aquaculture that this exposure to phytoestrogens is causing hormonal imbalances and is feminizing some of the male fish. And this is impacting humans too. Progesterone, on the other hand, keeps estrogen in balance. And so many humans are progesterone deficient and estrogen dominant due to this large change in dietary and environmental exposures. And to make matters worse, PUFAs, so large increase in PUFAs. PUFAs are rich in vegetable oils, seed oils, and then chicken, pork, eggs from livestock fed high PUFA diets. So PUFAs make the estrogen dominant states worse because PUFA intake damages our natural estrogen detoxification pathways. I'm going to say that one more time because this is very important. PUFAs damage our natural estrogen detoxification pathway. So again, estrogens are stored in the fat, but they're detoxified through 2-hydroxylation. So basically this process makes the estrogen molecules more water soluble and thus more easily excreted through the body. So here's a quote from the literature, quote, high intake of the linoleic acid and arachidonic acid, these are PUFAs. So high intake of PUFAs inhibits the detoxification of O-estrogens by 2-hydroxylation and increases 16-alpha hydroxylation, resulting in metabolites that can undergo redox cycling and generate hydroxyl radicals, end quote. Seed oils, vegetable oils, chicken, pork, egg products high in the same types of these fats, linoleic acid and omega-6, they're destroying the estrogen detox pathway. So we're increasing our estrogen exposure, increasing our PUFA exposure. They're compounding each other, making the entire situation worse, lowering metabolic rate, lowering thyroid health, which lowers systemic function of the body. And we are seeing this across the board with the decline in our health and the rise in obesity rates. So every little bit of estrogen, especially exogenous estrogen that we can control, any bit that we can limit and reduce our consumption or exposure to, it will benefit us greatly. Because again, these are compounding day after day, meal after meal, or like personal care product over like each day, right? So some things that you are exposed to regularly, what you eat every single day, what you put on your skin every single day, those things add up. And so if you can control those better with considering PUFAs and phytoestrogen level content, that will go a really long way. And unfortunately, your PUFAs and your types of fat inside your body have really long half-lives, which means it takes a while for the body to like switch out your fatty acid composition inside of us. And so that just further shows that what you eat every single day, like it really does matter because it impacts your health 1-2 years from now. And so being cognizant of this is important. And that is my passion project and our passion here at Nourish. We want to provide and make it easy to access low PUFA, hormonally balanced, low phytoestrogen food products. So we now have access. You can now purchase low PUFA, low phytoestrogen, hormonally imbalanced eggs, hormonally balanced, not imbalanced, hormonally balanced eggs. Those are now available. You can also shop Nourish Cooperative for low PUFA, low estrogen chicken and pork products, and beef as well, because our beef 100% grass-fed, not being exposed to these high grains that are exposed to lots of toxic pesticides and chemicals. So very passionate about producing food that's free from estrogenic compounds so that you can take control of your health, improve your thyroid and metabolic health, improve your hormonal balance. And so it's to help make it not so hard to be healthy given the conventional food system. So hormonally balanced, low PUFA food as Mother Nature intended. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will chat.